Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. And I know it's February and it's a little bit late to say that, but I haven't posted a video this year, so Happy New Year. This year I kind of want to get back into creating video content. I'm not going to promise that it's going to be weekly or every second week or regular or consistent or anything, but I just want to create more content. And I thought the best way to dip my toe back into the YouTube pond is by maybe attempting to do monthly wrap-ups for what I read this year. The only thing I'm worried about is I do this thing, particularly the past couple of years, where I will start off the year really strong. I'll read like 4 or 5 books and then I'll stop reading for like 2 months, and then I'll read like 3 books again, and then I'll stop reading for a couple of months. And it's frustrating, don't get me wrong. Like, I get frustrated with myself for doing that, because it's not that I don't want to read. I'm always like keen to read and I want to read. It's just I do other things instead of reading. I will, you know, watch YouTube videos, or I'll watch TV shows or things like that, and I just don't read. But I'm hoping that if I set myself the goal of doing monthly wrap-ups on YouTube, that I'll hold myself accountable, even if I only read 1 book in a month. So let's just dive in. Let's see how this goes. I'm really excited with how well I've started 2023. I've read 6 books so far this year. My goal this year is 52 books, so I'm already 12% of the way there. I think I'm 2 books ahead of myself, which I'm really excited about. I love seeing that on like Goodreads or Storygraph when it says how many books you are ahead, because I'm like, yes, let's keep ahead. Let's don't fall behind. We'll see how we go. I've read 2,043 pages so far for the year, for the month, and my average rating is 4.25 stars, which is really good. Like, that's such a really great way to start the year. Also, I've had a little bit of variety in what I've read. If you guys know me, you'll know that I have become very much a romance reader the past like 4 or 5 years. That's sort of been the genre that I will read. I will sort of branch out a little bit, but romance is the main focus. So far this year I've read 4 different genres: romance, memoir, general non-fiction, and adult fiction, which I'm really excited about. So anyway, enough rambling, let's get into the wrap-up. So firstly, we have A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone, sorry. This is the first book in a series. They just announced a sequel, which I'm really excited about, because there are so many awesome secondary characters in this book that I was like, they need their own book. So I'm excited that at least there's going to be 1 more book. Feel like there might be some more, but we'll see how we go. Now, this is a Christmas read, and I did read most of it before Christmas last year, but I got caught up in like all the festivities and I just never finished it before the end of the year. So it was, I mean, most of it was last year, but I finished it obviously this year. This is a really fun book. So this one follows a porn star and an ex-boy band bad boy, who obviously both have interesting reputations, and they are working together and starring alongside one another on a Christmas film for Hope Flicks, which is kind of like Hallmark, you know, really sweet romances and, you know, pristine reputation. They don't really want scandal. They don't know that they're employing a porn star as their leading lady. They do know about the boy band reputation, but you know, he's trying to clean up his act, and so they both are fans of one another prior to working together, and so there is an instant connection when they are on set together, and they start hooking up in secret. But their hookup has the potential to ruin everything that they are working to achieve by doing this film. It was so good. Julie, I've not read any of Julie or Sierra's individual work yet, but I definitely need to now. I think they work really well together. I loved these characters. The story was really fun. It was very spicy if you're into that. Like, you could melt the winter snow with some of these scenes. It was really fun and I really enjoyed it. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Would recommend if you are into some spicy romance and forced proximity kind of vibes. Really enjoyable, would recommend. Book number 2 was Spare by Prince Harry. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I'm sure every man and his dog has heard about this book. If you are someone who has only read the headlines, skimmed the stories, I do recommend actually reading the book, because so much of the stuff that has been put in the media has been taken out of context, or things has been taken out of context, or there have been things that the media have put so much emphasis and focus on, when in the book it was literally a passing comment. Now I will say this book is ghostwritten, but I feel like the ghostwriter, and I don't remember his name and I feel bad about that, he did a really good job like getting into the character of Harry, I suppose, and like using his voice. And I can say that because I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Harry, and like him reading the book, it didn't feel like he hadn't written it, you know what I mean? Even though it was like, it didn't feel like that he hadn't written it at all. It still felt like he was reading his own story, his own words, even though while I'm sure he worked really closely with his ghostwriter, you know, the ghostwriter could add flair and embellishments. Yeah, I don't know. If you've read it, you probably understand what I mean. I saw a lot of people talking about how good the ghostwriter was, and how good he did sort of emulate Harry, which I think is a mark of a good ghostwriter. If you can ghostwrite something and have the audience believe that it is the author writing it, like, I think that's a good thing. So for those of you who somehow don't know what this book is about, it's obviously Harry's life story. It starts with the death of Diana, it goes all the way up to the death of Queen Elizabeth, and he talks about his time at school, in the military, just general royal stuff, both the family side of being a royal and the working side of being a royal. Talks about different relationships he's had, sort of the main relationships he's had over the years. A big focus of the book is how much the British tabloid press have negatively impacted various aspects of his life over the years, starting way back to before Diana died. This isn't a new stance that Harry's had. He's had this stance like since his mother died. He's always blamed the media for Diana's death, and there has been things throughout his life that the media have either completely fabricated about his life or have twisted. And you know, this started when he was a teenager. This started when he was essentially a child grieving the loss of his mother and trying to make his way in the world, through his military career, where the media literally published his location, which put a massive target on his head and those around him, like literally to the point where the Taliban were like, right, we are going to focus our attention on that area, right up to his relationship with Meghan and how much that has affected both of their mental health and their relationship, and why they chose to leave England, to take a massive step back from royal working life and things like that. It is really insightful. I really recommend reading it. I enjoyed it, and it's the first memoir I've read in a while, and yeah, would recommend. I then continued the non-fiction train with I'll Be There For You by Kelsey Miller. This is the one about friends. I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. This is essentially a history of Friends, and looking at the highs and lows of the show, both behind the scenes and on camera. And it sort of looks at it more from like a pop culture perspective. Like there is a little bit of like television history in here and a little bit of backstory about how David Crane and Marta Kaufman came to work together and to create Friends, and the casting process behind each of the characters and the actors and what their work was before being cast on Friends. But it looks at sort of season by season things that were happening on the show and within production, and also just in the world in general. And so it talks about also like the treatment of gay characters, or sort of lack thereof, how the treatment of trans characters, how there isn't really much ethnic diversity, how the show tackled 9/11, things like that. And it looks at those things both through what people were saying at the time when the show was airing and being filmed, and then also more modern takes on the show. But how even though looking back at the show now, it sort of is a bit like they didn't do necessarily a good job with a certain aspect, how at the time though it was actually quite a big deal for what they did with what they showed and things like that. I really enjoyed it. If you're a Friends fan, I definitely recommend checking it out. If you're also into like television and pop culture history, I think this is also a really good book. Kelsey does a really good job at examining how Friends has influenced pop culture and how it just, and sort of trying to pinpoint why it blew up so much and why it's still so relevant today. If you are a massive Friends fan like myself and you are going into this expecting to learn something completely brand new and facts that you didn't know about, I'm going to say you might be a little bit disappointed, because there's not a lot in here that I was like, oh, I never knew that. A lot of the facts that Kelsey shares are, you know, ones that we sort of already know. And also, one thing I was kind of disappointed about, Kelsey never actually interviewed David Crane, Marta Kaufman, or Kevin Bright, or any of the actors. A lot of the quotes that she pulls are from other interviews and articles and things like that. But I think she does a really great job at just condensing the history of the show. And there are a few similar books to this I'm really interested to check out. But yeah, if you're a Friends fan, add this to your collection because it's definitely a nice thing to have. So books 4 and 5 are The Deal and the Mistake by Elle Kennedy, books 1 and 2 in the Off Campus series. I gave both of these books 4.5 out of 5 stars. They were so good. If you were into sports college romances, these are definitely ones you need to add to your TBR, particularly if you love hockey. I feel like hockey is my favorite sports romance sport. I've read a few different sports, but I always seem to come back to hockey. But I also think a lot of authors have been writing hockey like somewhat recently. A few of my favorite authors like delved into the sports romance genre and they focused on hockey. So it must be a thing. People must be obsessed with hockey these days, but I'm not complaining because I really enjoy it. The Deal is a tutoring fake dating scenario. The captain of the hockey team, Garrett, fails his midterm in ethics and is at risk of being benched from the team. He won't be able to play anymore until he gets his grade back up. He notices that Hannah, one of his classmates, aced the test when most people in the class actually failed it. So he asks her to tutor him. She initially says no, but he dangles an offer in front of her that she can't refuse. They'll go on a couple of fake dates, which will get the attention of the guy she is crushing on and kind of get him to be interested in her. But as the tutoring sessions start and as they start the little fake dating charade, they kind of realize that maybe the relationship they need to be working on is the one between them. This is a good book. It was fun, it was flirty, it was swoony. The characters had some really good banter. Then The Mistake is a bit of a second chance romance. We follow Logan, who is a hockey defenseman. He is best friends with Garrett and he thinks he's in love with Hannah, and so he's kind of avoiding the pair of them at this stage. In order to get a distraction, he's decided to go off to a party. He ends up not remembering the address and winds up at the door of a freshman called Grace. They end up watching Die Hard together and then hooking up, and they kind of just start seeing one another, and Logan kind of likes this distraction. He accidentally puts his foot in it and destroys any chance that they have of being a couple. They then go on summer break. There is radio silence between the pair, and when they return to school for Logan's final year, he is determined to prove to Grace that what he said was an accident, that he didn't mean it, and that it was a mistake, and that he genuinely wants to be with her. And so she kind of makes him jump through a couple of hoops just to prove to her that, you know, he is the real deal and he is serious. This was another really fun one. I feel like I kind of preferred Logan and Grace over Hannah and Garrett, but I don't know, they were both pretty on par with one another. Both really enjoyable reads. Finally, book number 6 is The Mammy by Brendan O'Carroll, the first book in the Agnes Brown series. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. This is essentially a prequel to the Mrs. Brown's Boys series. It picks up on the day that Agnes becomes a widow in March 1967 and goes all the way up to Christmas of that year, following the first 9 months of Agnes being a widow and trying to raise her 7 children, and what life was like in Dublin during the late 1960s, particularly in the tenements, so the poor area of the town, the poor area of the city. We follow Agnes running her fruit and veg stall. We get to see what some of the kids were doing during this time. So Mark, the oldest, is 14. Trevor, the youngest, is 3. The main focus on the kids is actually Mark, who wants to finish school and get a job, and sort of that element of it. And then the other child we follow a little bit of is Kathy, who is 10, and obviously being the only girl, she goes to a Catholic school run by nuns, and sort of that experience for her. We get to see Agnes with her best friend Marion and some stuff going on there. There might be a little bit of romance happening in here. It's really fun. Brendan packs in so many laughs in this book. Like, I literally laughed out loud. And even though there is so much comedy crammed in this very short book, like it's barely 200 pages long, it doesn't feel like it's an overload. it just felt natural. And I suppose because I obviously know these characters, I love the TV series, I know the characters, so it made sense. I feel like even though this is a prequel series, or this book's a prequel, and I kind of think the next two in the trilogy sort of are meant to be more inspiring the timeline of the show a little bit more. Even though it's a prequel, it's definitely a prequel you have to sort of read, or you will enjoy more if you've watched the series. I will say these books were originally written in the 90s when Brendan originally created the character of Mrs. Brown. Between writing the character in the 90s, doing the original like direct-to-DVD series in the early 2000s, and then doing the BBC series from 2009, he has sort of changed some aspects of the storyline and the characterizations and some of the backstory and things like that. So if you are going to go into these thinking like it is the be-all and end-all prequel, you will be a little bit disappointed. One of the things I was really excited to see in here, for example, was we got talk of Kathy's communion. And so I was like, oh, we get to like see firsthand the whole communion dress saga that we learn about in the show. No, like her communion went off fine in the book. So yeah, there are little things that like aren't relevant as much now to the current TV series, but this story is what inspired Brendan to do the current version of the TV show, which is really exciting. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read the other two books in this series. So they were all the books that I read in January, and I'm really excited about what I read. It has kept me motivated and kept me inspired to keep reading. I feel like if you start off your reading year on a good foot and you feel confident and happy with what you've read, regardless of the number of books you've read, I feel like that's a good way to start the year and a good way to like continue on throughout the year. So fingers crossed that February can be just as good a reading month and I can read some more really great books. If you want to know more about my thoughts on any of these books, I'll link below to all of their reviews so you can read more about what the books are about, more about my thoughts. If you want to see more bookish stuff from me, obviously subscribe to this channel in case I do upload more videos, because I'm at least doing monthly wrap-ups. But I would say probably follow me on Instagram. That's where I post most of my bookish stuff. All of my social links will be in the description below. Let me know what you've read this month. If you've done a wrap up, let me know, because I want to go watch it. I feel like that also helps me keep inspired by watching other people's content. So yes, give this video a thumbs up. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts are on them. Let me know what you read during January. And I will see you guys most definitely in my February wrap up. Maybe before then, we'll see what happens. Okay, bye.